then that list of demands will begin like this. Black people are demanding reparations across the board. Now, what do we mean by reparations across the board? Black people have not just been enslaved. Black people were not just Jim Crow segregation oppressed. Black people have been victimized at literally every level, every strata, every aspect of this society. And to give it the blanket term of systemic racism begins to get at the issue. But if you are going to discuss what needs to be done to rectify the issue, then you've got to discuss that reparations starts with economics but does not end there. It is not merely an economic issue. So as black people, we are going to start by saying the issue is reparations across the board. You will not hear this from your hand-picked puppets of the white media. You will not hear it from their LGBT Negro flunkies. You will only hear it here. YouTube is restricting the views on this channel. They are restricting our visibility right now. So I need all of you to share this and to let people know that we talking about the real thing over here. We're not going to let them stop us. They're not sharing this video with people on YouTube. Okay, I need everybody listening to me right now to share this because this is the issue. We're putting the world on notice of exactly what are our demands. So if you want to give it a blanket term, the demand is reparations across the board. Now, what exactly does that entail? What exactly does that mean? That's what we are going to get into now. Number one, before we go any further, number one, first and foremost, it will be understood that the agenda must address black people and only black people. We are not here to discuss every ill of society. We are not going to sit up here and let you divert and detour the conversation into non-black issues. We're not going to let you do what the New York Times, this dirty, filthy piece of crap, white supremacist, historical news, so-called newspaper outlet has done. That when black people start beating on white supremacy, they jump in and say, all right, enough of that now. Let's talk about other issues. No, and well, we sent some Negro flunkies to sit up here and tell you, hey, you got to listen to them. No, we don't. We are identifying collaborators. If you hear somebody tell you, well, the issue is all black lives, we already said black lives. To say all black lives is redundant. Well, we need to discuss what happened to LGBT. No, you want us to stop talking about white supremacy, and you are a collaborator. Which is why the white media wants to magnify that and amplify it, and we will not let them change the subject. First and foremost, the agenda must address black people and only black people, period, full stop. Not minority, not black and brown, not any other additions, no additives, all preservatives. When black people are specifically targeted and harmed by the government, they always lead off when we say it's time for solutions by saying we need to do something for black people. The discussion always starts about black people to get us calmed down whenever we rise up, but invariably politicians in the media, when it's time to discuss the allocation of resources to rectify and remedy the problem, which is the struggle and discrimination against black people, they start off by using our name and then divert the resources intended to help us into helping everyone except us. So the problem begins because 100% of the issue is what's wrong with black people, but when it's time for the solution, all of a sudden the remedy is 3% directed towards black people. That is a bait and switch game that has been going on for the longest, and we are calling it out that before we discuss anything, the issue is black people for black people, only black people. We are going to deal with this problem alone. And anything else comes later down the line. We'll know the issue is fixed when we tell you it's fixed. It has been an unforgivable insult to see programs like affirmative action, which was originally supposedly set aside meant to correct white supremacist racial injustice against black people, and then to see white people receive affirmative action resources intended for the very black people that their white privilege has been victimizing. No more bait and switch language. The agenda begins, but we are setting the table by saying we are here to discuss black people, what black people need, and what black people are due to get. The remedy for black people, not transgender, not humpbacks, not women, not people of color, not minorities. If you are a black person, we are talking about what is necessary for you in a system to overturn this system of white supremacy that victimizes us all with impunity. So first and foremost, that is where it begins. If discussion is not framed in that light from the very start, then in the words of Dr. John Henrik Clarke, it is illegitimate. And it is out of order, and it needs to be immediately aborted. We are not going to sit down and discuss black people indirectly. We are going to discuss black people only, and any attempt to veer and steer in another direction will be called out for what it is, and we're getting up and walking away and taking back to the streets. Number 2. Black society's top priority is economic empowerment. If you want to know what the solution is, if you want to know what we're stomping for, if you want to know what the ultimate end goal is, and the metric by which we measure whether or not we are progressing and succeeding, we're measuring it in dollars. If we as a group universally got more dollars, then we moving in the right direction. When you handpick a bootlicking lackey like Oprah Winfrey, and you all dump a bunch of money in her for betraying her people, no, we're not going for the, well, if one black person doing well, no. Either we all coming up or we're all going down. But you're not going to handpick Negroes and tell us, well, we dumped off a bunch of money to pay off this nigga over here to betray the rest of you. And then, well, ain't you doing good? Oprah doing well? No, just because your Negro flunkies are doing all right, that's not the metric. Black people across the board, as a group, we need to have more economic control. We need to have absolute economic control. The black economy and black infrastructure, economic infrastructure, needs to be controlled by us. And if we are not making more money, if we are not holders of capital, if we are not able to finance these things at an unlimited, global, and universal level, then the system is failing. Period. We do not wish to be your employees. We will not be your servants. We are going to be leaders and masters in our own right. No one is going to tell us where the beginning or the end is. We will define all of those things ourselves. But we understand a key point. You may hate us because we're black, but you're able to victimize us because we're poor. And as long as we remain poor, we remain easy victims. But the more affluent we are with our black identities, point number 1, the agenda is black people. Point number 2 is how you enforce point number 1. So making sure that we have economic empowerment is how we enforce number 1. And at that point, we're ready for anything you want to throw at us, and we can finance whatever level of response we need to. The Black Wall Street was victimized because they had an economy, but they were missing stockpiling weapons. But when you got an economy, you focus on that so you can protect your economy. But without the financing, you will not ultimately be able to hold it. So before we say anything else, the agenda is black people. Well, what do black people want? Our top priority is economic empowerment. That is what the discussion is about. And if it's about anything else, it's illegitimate and out of order. We're not here to discuss subterfuge or deflections. The wealth of America and the Western world was built first and foremost on exploiting black labor through slavery and later using institutionalized racism, which still exists, to trap black people into being a perpetual labor, consumer, and prison class of citizen. The only solution is for black people to have full control of our own economic infrastructure and destiny. Right now, state and local governments are willing to throw billions of dollars to support mega corporations owned by white men like Jeff Bezos, who's not going to do anything but make a few wealthy individuals even wealthier. And if the state of New York were to utilize that same tract of land in Long Island City that they were going to give away to Amazon, with the same economic incentives that they were going to squander on Amazon and instead make that a concentrated development zone for confirmed black businesses, no token black businesses, no I look white but I'm really black when you think about it businesses, true black businesses, that would do we could do far more with that opportunity with far less than Bezos ever could. And that's the real reason so many people oppose it. That's the same reason it must happen. How do you make that occur? There needs to be a Marshall Plan for Black America. And by that, I mean across the board, America must accept a Marshall Plan ideology where black people are concerned. After World War II, Japan was bombed to hell. America didn't enslave them. They didn't institute Jim Crow. They didn't institute institutional segregation and racism. They rebuilt Japanese society as one of their puppet states. I shouldn't say puppet state necessarily, but certainly one of their disciple states. And that we're going to get you up to 20th century speed so that you can become a satellite in Asia for our power and control. But they rebuilt that society to 20th century specifications. The federal and state governments in the United States, every state, every individual state, and the United States federal government as a whole, all engaged in active warfare against the black population of this country with one goal in mind: to keep black people impoverished for white society's benefit. And just as laws like the Homestead Act were written to give white people free land that they could develop and grow rich from generationally, while excluding the very black people who built the country from having access to those types of programs. And just like state governments in places like Tulsa, Oklahoma, Wilmington, North Carolina, bombed and massacred black people for the crime of developing their own thriving economic centers, despite the atrocities of Jim Crow, we now need those same governments to put those resources that they stole from us and put them back into the black population that they stole it from. Just like Japan was given a Marshall Plan with clear goals and clear procedures to rebuild Japan as a modern and capable industrial player after the war with America, we need institutionalized racism to turn its focus towards institutionalized black business development. Institutionalized racism needs to give way to institutionalized black business development to rebuild black society following the war with white supremacy. Because white and non-black people control the economy of every single black neighborhood in America. But there isn't a single white neighborhood in the world where black people control white people's economy. They hate us because we're black, but they can victimize us because we are poor. And you can basically tie every single one of our problems in black society back to the fact that we are economically oppressed, devastated, and enslaved. So now that we've determined that the agenda is black people, okay, what is on the agenda for black people? Economic empowerment. That is going to be the foundation upon which you build all other progress. Period. Point blank. End of discussion. Point number 3. The total dismantling of systemic white supremacy. Across American society, white supremacy is not just a single thing. It is not a single artifact. It is not a single structure. You are up against a system that permeates every factor, every facet, every aspect of your life from the moment that you wake up to the moment that you go to sleep. You are a prisoner in this society. And we have a bunch of names for it: racism, white supremacy, white privilege. But at the end of the day, the problem with white supremacy is its systemic nature. It would be different if white supremacy only occupied one aspect of American life, one aspect of society. If it did, that would be different. But white supremacy permeates everything. There is literally nowhere you can go and nothing you can do to escape it. It is in all aspects of American life, including inside black society, because you've got a bunch of black people who have adopted a white supremacist mindset. You are literally up against that. Now, what do I mean by its total dismantling? Once again, after World War II, take a look at the tremendous difference in the way that black people have been treated as opposed to other people. Take a look at how the Japanese were treated after they went to war against America, and then see how we were treated. What about the Jews? After World War II, they were given the Nuremberg trials, where they hunted down anybody who was a Nazi, anybody who harbored white supremacist sentiment. They dismantled white supremacy in Germany, soup to nuts to bolts, from the bottom to the top. It was completely outlawed and criminalized. That is what needs to happen in Western society, and specifically in America now. The complete criminalization and outlawing of white supremacy, period. You cannot have it. It cannot be there. You're not going to have a prosecutor start explaining away why it's allowed to be there. White supremacy must be recognized as the ultimate evil that it is, and in every aspect of life, from economic to educational to media to the so-called justice system, which is really just a court system, to daycare, to sports, to recreation. White supremacy as a system needs to be criminalized, outlawed, and dismantled the same way that you did in Nazi Germany for Jewish people. You did it there. And someone may attempt to argue, well, they didn't eradicate white supremacy in Germany. You know what? I'll take what the Jews got in Germany and I'll make it work. Compared to what we have here, I'll take what they got in Germany and I'll make it work like hell over here. You better believe that. Point number 4. White supremacist and police violence should be determined and classified as a human rights violation. This idea that we are going to treat white supremacist violence and white supremacists masquerading as police officers, white supremacist lieutenants, captains, and police chiefs co-signing the system, which is why point number 3 was outlawing it and criminalizing it. It needs to be a human rights violation. We are not discussing it in terms of assault. What they did was the system decided that there were not enough black people selling drugs. So in case you all haven't known, what they've done now is if you're a pimp and you running whores, they call that now human trafficking. Now, it used to be that human trafficking had a very specific meaning. It meant that you kidnapped females. It basically was like you kidnap females or kidnap people. It was like slavery. You had to take them against their will. today they have redefined human trafficking and saying that if you're a pimp, but specifically only if you're black male pimps, well, you're not guilty of pimping anymore. Why, that's human trafficking. And oh, we've got a whole list of international laws. So they have criminalized that basically on the level of Nazi Germany. Very glad that you started this process. It is now time for white supremacist and police violence to be classified as a human rights violation. When third world countries have armed police out there shooting unarmed citizens, and those governments defend and condone the acts of their police forces, the United States is quick to call those human rights violations. But when police in America murder unarmed black people, when white citizens murder unarmed black people, the United States calls that proper police procedure and self-defense. But when a black person tries it, all of a sudden you find out you're in jail. That language of calling it proper police procedure and self-defense, that language didn't work for the Nazis, and it shouldn't work in New York, California, or anywhere else. The only reason that George Floyd, Eric Garner, Philando Castile, Tamir Rice, and most black victims of police violence stand still while they are executed by police is because the cop has a gun drawn on them. That is a human rights violation. When someone who is supposed to be representing the government abuses that authority and commits murder or assault, that is a human rights violation because you are taking advantage of people who are submitting to the law, and then you're condoning somebody violating their human rights because the law is supposed to first and foremost defend our human rights, not defend someone's profession. And in every other instance of society, when a person commits an offense or a crime, simply having a gun in your possession enhances the charges. Now, you know, if somebody is a driver of an 18-wheeler and they run over 3 people deliberately, they're charged with vehicular manslaughter or vehicular homicide, even though the truck is a part of their job duties. If they started off okay and then changed at the last minute and committed a crime, you're going to be held accountable because you're driving a vehicle. That's the way it works in every other aspect of society except for police. Police have been given an exemption in this area, not because it makes legal, logical sense, but because politicians understand that if black people can't be economically controlled, then they must be violently terrorized, and protecting police while they use guns to execute that violence is a necessity. The police are the chosen state goons and thugs who carry out state-sanctioned violence against black people. So if it is a human rights violation, what should be done? The police are the military enforcement arm of white supremacy. And the George W. Bush administration over a decade ago reported that law enforcement in America has been totally and completely co-opted and infested from top to bottom by white supremacist elements. And yet there's been nothing done to root them out and remove these white supremacist operatives. Once again, we needed to have a Nuremberg type event, and that hasn't happened. You have white supremacist beat cops, sergeants, lieutenants, captains, even police chiefs and prosecutors who are using police and sheriff's departments as havens and nests where white supremacists can be hired in a profession that allows you to kill black people with impunity, and the district attorney, also a white supremacist or a white supremacist puppet, will back you up on it. And we need to stop pretending that this daily parade of never-ending slaughters and shootings of unarmed black people is some type of weird fluke of mathematics, and call it for what it is: the wholesale takeover of American so-called law enforcement by violent white supremacists masquerading as police officers. Talk of police reform is a con job. You cannot reform a white supremacist. You cannot retrain a white supremacist. If you find him, you must terminate his job, and if he harms a citizen, you must terminate his freedom, and if he's a threat, you must terminate his life. But you cannot reform a white supremacist. The law needs to change. We need to recognize white supremacy as terrorism. We do not attempt to reform terrorists. We attempt to make sure that they are no longer harmful to the society. White supremacy is a human rights violation. It is domestic terrorism, and it must be and should be and will be regarded and punished. There is nothing you can do with white supremacy except to separate it from everyone else and punish it. That is how you are going to subdue it. This isn't about getting them to like us. This isn't about ridding the world of white supremacy. It is about making sure that it is beaten down to the point that it is no longer a threat to the greater population. Next step, the removal of the symbols of institutionalized racism on public grounds. The country of Germany, since World War II, has been able to do quite well to build a rich culture for themselves and teach their children about World War II without having statues of the Nazis decorating their national public facilities. But in America, our Nazis and war criminals are on the steps of the courthouses, in the town squares, and in street corners across America. A black person shouldn't have to look at a statue of Robert E. Lee or Stonewall Jackson when he enters a courthouse. That is a sure sign that he'll get no justice in there. Those statues have nothing to do with history or the law. They are acts of racial terrorism and intimidation aimed at black people. Germany has rail stations. Germany has jet airplanes. Germany has a freeway. All of those were inventions and innovations of the Nazis. All of those. Their existence here in America, we took Nazi scientists and engineers and brought them to America to do those things for us after they lost the war. But Germany didn't have to make statues to Werner von Braun or Ehrlichman or Joseph Hess. They didn't have to make statues to the Nazis who created those innovations. They kept the innovations and put the pictures of the Nazis in a museum where they belong so that society is not encumbered. So society can progress without these monsters standing in the way. Understand, the only reason that there's a statue of Robert E. Lee anywhere is because that is an act of domestic terrorism. That is an act of claiming this as domestic property and culturally claiming this land for white supremacy. That is the manner in which white supremacists mark their territory, by putting up huge monuments to the monsters that they venerate and pray to. Black children should not have to sit up here and pass by a statue of the American Nazis. This is how you enculturate and condition children to start excusing away white supremacy. Next thing you know, your kids start talking like white supremacists. They start making excuses not for the existence of the statue, but for the acceptance of the legitimacy of the person that the statue was made of. Next thing you know, they start saying Robert E. Lee wasn't a slave owner. That's not true. Robert E. Lee didn't directly buy them, but he was a slave owner. Stonewall Jackson, next thing you know, your kids start equivocating and start sounding like Fox News. They start rationalizing these things away. They start saying, well, these were just men of their time. They start talking as if these weren't things that happened to black people, that these were things that happened to somebody else. And you've got black cities in America where the state governments These unreformed Confederates and blatant white supremacists have told you that, oh, we're going to keep up these symbols of white supremacy, even though these are black cities and black areas. That even though you've taken it back, we've marked our territory. And we've made it illegal for you to take down the signs and take down the monuments to these monsters of history. I endorse removing them by all means necessary. They have no place in a civilized society and certainly have no place in a black one. Period, point blank. Next, we need to discuss the reconstitution of the American economic order across the board. Lately, they've been talking about 20%, and that alone would be a good thing if you make it mandatory. I think 20% is a good start. For those of you who are unaware, it simply basically says that these entities have to do at least 20% of their business with black businesses. Now, companies in America today receive public assistance in the form of tax breaks and even tax credits, as well as free infrastructure upgrades to make it easier for them to do business. So your tax dollars as black people in Atlanta, Los Angeles, St. Louis, whenever they build a Walmart, whenever they build a Whole Foods or whatever, they redo the whole damn intersection. Now, they'll never do that for your business, but for Walmart, they rebuild whole intersections. They put up new traffic lights. They put in new sewage lines. They do all types of millions of dollars of your black tax dollars are put to work for white corporations. But when you show up, they tell you, oh no, that's welfare. We can't just give you nothing. Meanwhile, they're giving white businesses things all over the place right after they just told you that they can't do it for you. So we need to be done asking, and it is time to demand that we muscle in. You need to require corporations that if they want to do business in your city, as part of the requirement to get their business license, at least 20% of their contracts must go to black businesses that are either purely black sole proprietorships or are corporations that are 75% black owned, as a condition of being able to do business in your city and in your state. So you're not going to play that game of, well, I mean, we ain't going to have no $5 Negroes. You're not going to have any Rachel Dolezals jump up and say, hey, where's my 20%? And you're not going to have any white front groups say, well, hey, we'll just go find us a token Negro who doesn't actually own anything, and we'll use him as our front person to get these contracts. And this should be a condition of getting a business license to do business in that city or that state. If you all were not aware, in California now, Governor Newsom, they made it the law that most of these big corporations, now it's the law you have to have at least 1 or 2 females on your corporate board in order to remain incorporated in the state of California. That is the law today in California. That's the law now. That if you're a major corporation, you must have at least 1 or 2 women on your board. And I think it's actually percentage-wise, depending on how many men you got. Is it for every 5 men, there must be 1 woman or something like that? But you have to have a certain number of women on your corporate boards in California. Now, you do understand that those are going to be white women, right? It's not like there are going to be any black women. Those are going to be white women on those boards. So just like they've told you that Mexicans don't need insurance to drive in Los Angeles, they won't get their cars impounded, but niggas is getting jacked up on tow trucks every damn weekend if they don't have insurance. Now they're saying that white women need to have a right to be on corporate boards. So you all do understand what that means, right? by making this engraved into law, even if black people were to take over the economic infrastructure of California, as if we could, they've already made it the law that, by the way, you're going to have to put 2 white women on the board of directors of your company. It didn't make a racial requirement and say only majority white companies have to do this. This is everybody. So they're writing it into the law that they will have access to black companies before we've even had a chance to build any. So you know what? Since you've demonstrated that that's the way we rolling, then in order to get your business license in California, New York, Texas, Florida, Louisiana, or anywhere else, you need to have 20% of your contracts going to black businesses. And there's an essential reason why this is important. When businesses have a stable contract, when smaller or mid-sized businesses have a stable contract with a major company, this enables those smaller businesses to start making long-term plans. They can start projecting revenues into the near future more reliably. They can get access to lines of credit based on their relationships with those larger businesses. If you'll all remember, Bill Gates wasn't some business marvel. He took the idea of Windows from Xerox and another fellow who wrote the coding for it, and then he went to IBM. And yes, you can talk about his mother all you want to, but he was able to get a contract with IBM. Next thing you know, he didn't go get a job with IBM. Did you hear that? Bill Gates did not pursue a job with IBM. He pursued a contract with IBM. And from there, Bill Gates became several times bigger than IBM. That's how you build white wealth. That's how dimensions of connection being as few as possible builds white wealth. And they told black people, that's just reserved for us. If black folk are going to be talking about voting, that's what we need to vote for. That you must give your contracts to black people, and from there, we gonna make all kinds of things pop off. From there, do you all understand that if the average black person who's actually running their business correctly knew that they could get that type of access, there would be an economic revolution, not within decades, but within a couple of years, simply from being able to leverage those relationships with those major corporations, simply from being able to leverage that. These white businesses and white companies have done business along ethnic lines, giving preferential treatment to white businesses while locking out black ones even when the majority of their customer base is black. These major retailers, among other businesses, need to be required to do business with black vendors, and if there are no black vendors that meet their, quote, requirements, then they have to set up a program where they will mentor and shepherd black vendors through the process of upgrading their facilities or capabilities in order to do business with you. So you will give 20% of your contracts to black businesses, and if there are no black businesses, you will find one, and if you cannot find one, then you will mentor and shepherd one into being a vendor for your company. That is what it will be. Elon Musk is the very definition of white privilege. This is a dude who cashed out of PayPal, and from there, all he needs to do is say, hey, I got an idea, and next thing you know, white folk with money from around the world show up simply to sponsor his idea. It doesn't matter how harebrained. It doesn't matter how wild. It doesn't matter how crazy. And then people say that he's always succeeding. No, he's given so much money to put into his ideas that you have eliminated the possibility of failure. You put so much investment into him that he can't fail. And that's how you've been playing this game. So it's far past time that black folk get a piece of that action. When the automotive corporations, and I did this program a few months ago, when American and Western automotive corporations came into China, they thought they were going to come into China running the game they've always done in places like Mexico and South America. And China said, wait a minute, hit your brakes, white dude. You're not going to come over here and take it over. You're going to have to enter into contracts with Chinese automotive companies. It's mandatory, and you will share it 50-50 with our own homegrown Chinese companies. But it's going to be 50-50. You're not going to come over here and rape the economy and leave us with nothing. You're not going to do that. And that is what they've been doing all this time where black folk are concerned. Where black people are concerned, they keep telling us, well, you know, we can get you a job. Well, you know, we can get you a little bit of this. We can break you off a little bit of that. We'll see if there's something left over. But other people who have been prosperous and made this work, that's not the way they do it. They make sure that these other people, all they got to do is have a damn idea, and there's a bunch of folk lined up to invest in their idea. Black people, no matter how good your idea is, they've locked the door before you've ever had an opportunity to open it. And that's the goal. That's the game. And don't tell me about quality controls. Don't tell me about what black vendors and quality control, or do they do it as well? Damn it, China is giving Walmart toys that poison children for years now. China is selling Walmart toys that mangle and cripple and kill children. And Walmart has only gotten deeper into bed with China, not less in the bed with them. You want to talk about not meeting standards? Well, that was never an impediment to China doing business with Walmart. That's never been an impediment. But you're going to come to black folk and say, oh, you don't have enough capacity. This product isn't up to code. What the hell? And understand, this goes back to point number one. When you sit down and have this conversation with Walmart, on the agenda is black people and black people only, not minorities, not people of color, not women. And if you don't like it, we're going to pull your business license and we'll have somebody else occupying your building. And we'll just do it like that. Mohammed Mossadegh didn't ask the British if they were going to start dealing fairly with Iran. He simply said, your contracts say you're supposed to be giving us half this oil profit and you giving us a couple of pennies on the barrel. We are seizing control of your assets. We are nationalizing your assets, and it's no longer a debate of what you will do. You will do it because you don't control it anymore. And in black cities, while you're talking about cracking down on the police, you need to crack down on these businesses. Because black folk would actually have some assets and resources and legacy to pass down. You're going to cities across the country. Black people are 25% of the population of New York City and practically none of the city contracts. And that brings me to the next issue. Because if you notice, this says mandatory public and private contracts. Because across this country right now, you have black people who are 10%, 20%, 30% of the population, but the contracts go to white companies. So you're the majority of the population, but the contracts for the streets and everything else, you don't get to build your own streets. You don't get to make your own parks. You don't get to develop your own dog parks. They sat up here and told you, oh, you're just going to live here. Don't worry. In some cases, they'll bring white folk from out of state. Louisiana, where I'm from, is very good for that, but a bunch of other places are too. They go to places specifically, they like to go to Texas. Texas is a place that they really like to get contractors from. They really love getting contractors out of Texas, New Jersey, and California. Those are the three major places when you see freeways being built and whatnot. If they don't have anybody in their area who can build it, they go find one of these white corporations in New Jersey, Texas, or California to do it. How the hell are you going to have a city with a 30% black population, but when it's time to build the roads and build the freeways and build the schools and build the parks and build the infrastructure, all of a sudden, okay, black folk, you just go home? Absolutely wrong. We're going to bring in illegal aliens to do it. Absolutely not. If this is a black city, we will take care of building it for ourselves. But you have to also understand how this psychologically cripples you. If you've spent your entire life in a majority black city, but white folk have done all the infrastructure maintenance, then you've grown up your whole life with nobody in your family talking about that. So you just accept the idea that, hey, that ain't for us. That's not what we're supposed to do. White folks supposed to take care of that. So there's nobody in your family to even give you a frame of reference. Up there in New York and New Jersey, it's in the family businesses. White boys all over the damn place doing the sidewalk work, doing the street work, and you would figure it'd be better with the horrible condition the streets are in those places. You'd figure it'd be better. But they sit up here and keep those positions for themselves. If it's a black city, especially if it's a majority black city, all of the contracts should go to a black contractor. And if there is a white one, if you just can't find a black one, you need to implement the China protocol. You're going to get a white contractor and you're going to say hello to your new 50-50 partners. And every morning you are going to go over the books, go over the procedure, go over the plans, go over the blueprints, go over the numbers, and everybody is going to know how to set up this building, this freeway, this project when it is done. And if you don't like the fact that we're going to give you 50% of the last contract, I got a question for you, Mr. White Supremacist Contractor. Would you like to have 50% of the last contract? Or would you like to have 0% of the last contract? Understand, that's not something that would take decades to see cataclysmic changes happen. You would see economic earthquakes happen within a matter of 12 months. Let me tell you, when that type of money starts moving, you will see economic earthquakes happen in black society within a matter of months. It will take months to do that. Not years, certainly not decades. And you'll see changes and progress happen so damn fast it will make your head spin off of your shoulders. And let me be clear, the bidding starts at 20%. It doesn't end there. It doesn't start at 20%. I mean, it doesn't end at 20%. It simply starts there. We've got young black boys today. When I was a child, you had black men who were doing the construction work. They brought over illegals specifically for the purposes of making sure that you had these buffer classes who would join the shrinking white population in victimizing us. And we've been voting for integration. We've been voting for interracial sexual access. Do you understand the insanity of what our priorities have been? They're bringing over non-black people for the express purposes of replacing us. And we're jumping up here talking about, you know what we need is more love and more interracial babies is what we need. So you've got some dumb niggas who just play right into their hands.